Hi, I'm Dennis Corcoran, and just want to tell you a little bit about myself. I actually grew up not too far from where we're at right now. Behind me is the South River in Annapolis, Maryland. I grew up in Severna Park, Maryland, but spent most of my summers in Maine, mid-coast Maine, on a camp on a lake. I also ended up going to University of Maine at Orono, where I graduated in 1980. So I have a significant amount of time that I've spent in Maine, and with that, I've always been really in love with the mountains, the lakes, the ocean, the coastline. I've always liked creative writing, and that combined interest really led to my starting to write specifically a story that's centered in Maine. So after I graduated from the University of Maine, I started my working career. I was initially in the shopping center business, leasing retail space in a lot of the larger shopping centers in New Jersey. Then more recently, I transitioned out of that industry into the home improvement industry, which is what I'm doing now. I basically meet with homeowners and talk about what their needs are, with whether it's kitchens, bathrooms, siding, roofing, windows. And what I really like about that is that I'm always meeting with people and trying to help them get what they want with their needs in their homes. My inspiration with Elmer's Woods really comes from the characters that I encountered in Maine, and really other places as well, but incorporating the setting of Maine and particularly the mountains and the lakes of Maine. And honestly, some of the characters that you will read about in the spirit of Elmer's Woods are characters that I have met and kind of expanded their personalities through my own imagination. Just as an example, you will read about the general store in my book, and there was a real general store in the town that I spent my summers in, and it's pretty much how I describe it in the book. Even to the point where the characters who run the store, the things that go on, the gossip, the personalities, and Elmer himself is really inspired from an old hermit that was frequently at the general store hanging out, and at the end of the day he'd walk back to his shack in the woods. So those things really stuck in my mind as a child, and that combined with my really desire and interest in creative writing is really what brought the book to where it is today. It's almost like a puzzle where you're putting together a setting, characters, and a plot. So you're constantly working through that to develop a storyline. What I found to be most interesting, really two things: developing characters so that they are real to the people that are reading them. And the challenge with that really comes in making sure you're consistent throughout the storyline. So a personality, as you go forward in a book, is not surprising to the readers. Now transitioning over to the setting, really my experience in Maine and with the mountains and the lakes and the road systems, trying to create a description of those places in a way that the reader feels like they're actually there. When I think about Maine, what comes to mind often is the coastline, which is so different from a lot of the rest of the country. The rocky coast, the islands, the harbors, and then as you go inland, the mountains and the lakes, the forestry, the green trees, the roads are all, rural roads. You can sometimes go for miles without seeing a house. Those are the things that stuck in my mind as I created the setting for the things that took place in the book. My experience in Maine really has factored so much into the way I write that I think I could safely say to myself that I can really offer the most as a writer, focusing on that. A lot of the reason for that is because it's so vivid in my mind, and that makes it easier for me to put down on paper what I'm seeing, what I remember about it. Elmer is a character. He and his wife lost their child to an illness at a young age, and then later on in life, Elmer lost his wife, and that grief caused him to really move away from larger city atmosphere. He just wanted to escape, and he ended up in rural Maine. He actually met somebody at the general store that had a piece of property. He buys that property and sets his life as pretty much a hermit, living a reclusive life in small rural town Maine. A lot of the storyline, as you read, you see there's this evil against goodness, and that continues throughout the story. And there's a constant battle in evil versus goodness, and it comes through the characters and how they live their lives. Oftentimes, if I wake up in a bad mood, or I've got a challenge to face in the day, and I want to think about something positive, my mind travels to Maine, and I think about some of the pleasant memories, whether it's kayaking, sailing my sailboat, water skiing, hiking, all of those kinds of things. Even campouts when I was a kid, camping overnight out in a tent by the lake, and those things. When they come to mind, it kind of reminds me of how I want to write, and so the central theme in a lot of my writing is based around my experience with Maine. One of the things I found interesting when I was writing and developing characters is that my actual work experience, really contributed to assisting me with developing characters. And that came primarily because my job was people-oriented, always has been. Pretty much call it sales, but with that, I'm meeting people, gaining their trust, hopefully getting them to trust me. And in that process, I get to know people, they get to know me, and that intercommunication really has helped me in my storytelling with character development. So a question that keeps coming up now that the book is published and out there online and in some bookstores is, how do I categorize in the spirit of Elmer's Woods? And that was difficult because it's not a thriller, it's not fantasy fiction. I would call it crime fiction, but also it has an element of spiritual fiction in it, and that I'll leave the reader to see as they read it. But I think the title kind of will clue you in the spirit of Elmer's Woods. So far, what I've found with people who have read the book is that they're all encouraging me to create a sequel. The character development has kind of fueled that thinking, and so I definitely see continuing with the characters and the same setting in Maine. People that I would expect you would see, for one, would be Luke. Luke is the young boy who befriended Elmer, and he will definitely be in my next sequel story. As well, if you once you read the book, you'll see one of the more negative characters in Kenny Kelbert. Kenny is also a young boy around Luke's age, and I think those two are a good match to continue the storyline. And you just may see Elmer pop up again too. I think it could be a sequel. I think it could be a series. I'd love to see it in that format. I could actually see Elmer being portrayed by someone like Anthony Hopkins. I think his character, he has the ability to take a character like Elmer and make him real. I would really love to see someone like Anthony Hopkins portray him. I have another book. It's called Don't Be Afraid. So if you picture this, On the cover, there's a picture of an older gentleman and a younger boy representing his grandson. Don't be afraid. If you look at the bottom, it says it's just one of Pop-Up's stories. So this came about because with my 4 grandsons, when I visit, they like me to tell scary stories. So I'll sit down and tell them a scary story, and they'll want more. So I finally decided, to put some of these stories into writing, and came up with the book. There's, I think, 12 short stories, scary stories for kids that are old enough to get it and have an imagination to have them, fear the stories. And then each story ends with, don't be afraid, it's probably just one of Pop-Up's stories. So I ended up publishing that book, and I gave it to my gift as a gift to my grandsons. In the Spirit of Elmer's Woods is the first publication I've been involved with. I don't think my methodology was typical in that I didn't do an outline. I kind of took it one chapter at a time. I would wake up with a thought about what's next. So one of the things I found exciting in writing it myself was that I didn't know where it was going. And that in itself kept my mind very alert and sharp in terms of thinking about what's next. But I don't know that I would recommend that. It really, I think, depends on the person. You may want to do an outline, but I think the main thing is that you pick a subject, a topic, a place that moves you enough to really maximize the creativity that's coming out of your mind. After you read the book, you see that there's this constant battle between good and evil. And in the storyline, I like to think of Elmer in a spiritual way, guiding Luke to a good life. My next project really would be to continue and actually come up with a sequel for Elmer's Woods. But I don't see myself limiting it to just that. There are other topics and genres that I'd like to pursue as well, including, I've got 4 grandsons. 2 of them are just coming of the age where I can now do some scary stories for them too. So I got a lot that I'm thinking about. I'm actually feeling pretty good now that the book has been out for a few weeks, available online. With some of the comments that I've seen in terms of reviews, and I just noted a few of them here. One reader writes, the descriptive language is outstanding. I felt like I was there experiencing the sights and sounds of Maine. Another reader writes, a gripping, well-crafted novel. It draws you in quickly and never lets you go. Another reader writes, the character development and vivid description of rural Maine make this a must-read. And then another one, this one actually comes from one of my close friends who read the book. Outstanding, not at all what I expected. A lot of thoughts and emotions go along with this story. So thank you for taking time to watch this, and hopefully you'll get a copy of Elmer's Woods, enjoy it, and I will hopefully be following up with some more for you.